Hi, and welcome to Make More Love, Not War. This is Terah Harrison, licensed professional counselor and relationship expert.
This is her husband, Jeff Harrison, of no qualifications whatsoever, just a normal dude.
Hi, everybody. Today we're here with Amy Twong. You might remember her from the podcast we did with her that was amazing. If you haven't heard it yet, then go back and listen. But it's called The 4 Pillars of Happiness. We released it on December 24th, 2018. And as a gift to everyone, because it's been such a gift for me personally. It's been a gift for my clients. I know we've shared it with a lot of people, and you said you have too, Amy.
Yes. Hi, Terah. Hi, Jeff.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Amy's so lovely today. She's at our house today, and she brought me these beautiful sunflowers, and they just made me so happy to see them. And so, talking about happiness, happiness comes in so many different forms.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we talking today about dissecting the 4 pillars, and a lot of people have really resonated with the 4 pillars. Let's go over them again really quick, just briefly, so that those who have not listened to your podcast yet, which I know they're going to go out and do that again immediately right after this, they listen to this one. But for those who haven't, let's talk about what they are again.
Okay, thank you. So the idea of 4 pillars is that, just from different religion and different philosophy, as well as the Hawaiian, Hawaiian people, they do this. The indigenous people do this to self-heal. So the 4 pillars is basically, number 1 is compassion. Number 2 is forgiveness. Number 3 is love. And last one is appreciation. So put into words, it is I am sorry. You can put a blank under there. So for instance, I'm sorry this happened to you, or I'm sorry that this bad thing happened to me when I was younger. So you tell yourself, or you tell other people that I'm sorry. So you are showing compassion to yourself and to others. And number 2 is that I forgive. And in this case, you can forgive yourself. Say, I forgive myself for so-and-so. Or I can say, I forgive this person in my life who I felt that didn't treat me right. So in this way, you release yourself from the prison, the self-imprisonment of anger and resentment. Number 3 is love. And this love is unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. You are whole as who you are. You are perfect as who you are. And so that's the self-love and self-acceptance, and as well as the divine love and divine acceptance to all of us. Last but not least is appreciation. As we appreciate every little thing that's happening in our lives, it makes us happy. I think that's the whole, tie it with a nice ribbon, being thankful for everything that we have. Like Jeff said last podcast, we are living like queens and kings of 100 years ago, that, we have running hot water and such beauty in the nature. And all we have to do is open our eyes and see it. And then we know how special we are too, that all these great things are, just delivered to us on a silver platter. So that's appreciation.
Well, I love how this model really builds upon itself, because when you can have that compassion for yourself and for others, that leads you to free yourself with forgiveness, free others with forgiveness, and mostly free yourself, as we talked about in the last podcast. And that allows you to bring in love and appreciation.
Correct. Yeah, you really tied very well into a flow.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to start with talking about compassion. How do you see compassion in your life, or define compassion for yourself, Amy?
Well, I think compassion is that you see everything to be holy. In a way, you see others, and you see plants, you see animals, you see everything that's around you, sentient or non-sentient, animate or non-animate, as someone special, something special. And in that way, we talk about you're empathetic to the pain they're feeling because you feel their pain. You can reach out and comfort them. And also, I think in the Buddhism religion, they're very, very big on compassion. And they say the monk won't even step over an ant, because that's a sentient being. And when you respect others, you respect yourself. You have compassion to yourself. So when you have compassion to yourself, a lot of times when we are our worst critic, and we look in the mirror, all we see is not enough. And people around us, when who we grow up with, we hear more criticism than encouragement. So in this way, we have our own self-image as not perfect, or something wrong with me. Not worthy. So in this way, when you have compassion to yourself, you say, hey, I really toughed out as a child, and I really didn't deserve that. And I am actually a good person, and I was trying my best, and and I did the best I can at the time, even though maybe a decision was not correct from hindsight. But when you have compassion to yourself, like Terah said, it ties back to forgiveness. So the first step is have compassion. Then you can forgive yourself. You say, hey, I see my situation. I did the best I can at the time. I made the best decision I could with the limited knowledge I had at the time. And so, I'm compassionate to myself, and as well as to others. You see them maybe as a child, a helpless child, where they were hurt by others. And then, you start having compassion for them. So one of the things I heard, one person said, a lot of times it's hard to have compassion, especially for people that have wronged you. So his practice was he imagined a really tiny, beautiful little kitten, and he'll have compassion over this poor little kitten who's lost and who's homeless. And then he expand upon that. He'll, have compassion on some being that's a little bit more difficult, and then build upon that until he's able to have compassion for the person that is the most difficult.
Yeah, I love that imagery of the kitten or the child, because I'm thinking about having compassion in relationships. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, where if you're having an argument with someone, or somebody, your partner has hurt you, mm-hmm. You feel very defensive, and you really in our brain, we can decide, this person is not on my side, so I'm not on their side either. Mm-hmm. And you get in that place of anti-compassion, basically, mm-hmm. where you're pitted against your partner. Yeah. And so if you can visualize that your partner is, 5-year-old mm-hmm. having a little tantrum mm-hmm. because the 5-year-old was hurt themselves, mm-hmm. or the 5-year-old doesn't understand, or the 5-year-old is just trying to seek their own happiness, yeah. not understanding that it's bumping up against yours and creating problems for you. If you can visualize your partner in that way, it's not demeaning to them to see them as a child. It's really more evoking that compassion of, okay, this person has done something to hurt me, or this person has said something that hurt me, but it's coming from something that they're working through. Mm-hmm. For example, a couple weeks ago, I got triggered in a conversation with Jeff because I was telling him something that was really, really vulnerable for me, and he started making jokes, and I told him, like, this isn't funny. No, let's not make jokes. And I kept trying to go, mm-hmm. and he kept making jokes, and I got really upset. And so we stopped having the conversation, and later on I thought about it, and I was like, this is how Jeff's dealing with his discomfort with this thing that's really bothering me, and he doesn't want me to feel sad or upset about this thing, and so he's trying to change the mood.
Right.
And it was him not trying to hurt me. It was him trying to change the situation so that I wouldn't be uncomfortable. And when I could get that perspective and understand, like, you're not against me here, you really are trying to help me, maybe in a way that I didn't need, but he was trying.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just see where they're coming from. And I was also, I was reading something, and the article said, well, a lot of times when in a relationship, when we are triggered, by something, let's say, you have a weakness, or you have something, the hot spot that people can push, right? A lot of times it's our own child. They just triggered the childhood memory that we are defensive about. Not necessarily what you did, but it's that person working through childhood pain. So if you can see that person, hey, if you, let's say this person is insecure or about and very needy or something like that. And a lot of time it's not what you did. It's that when they were younger, they did not receive the unconditional love, and they did not, we talk about attachment theories, and from their parents, they may not have received that secure bonding. And that triggers a lot of things, in the relationship, that they can be insecure, or they are, worried about something, or they're jealous, or things like that. So definitely, if you can see them, say, hey, this may not be about me. It may be they are working through something from their childhood. And by the same token, when you are triggered off by your spouse's comment, think, hey, is this about my spouse not treating me right, or is this triggering my childhood wound that I need to heal from? So
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why it's so great to visualize your partner as a child, because, when I was thinking about this situation with Jeff, I was thinking of him as a 5-year-old boy, uncomfortable at school. I may be totally wrong here, Jeff. You can let me know. But this is what got me to compassion. I was visualizing him as a 5-year-old boy, uncomfortable at school. He didn't have the greatest time at school, with women talking about things that were too big for him and too much emotion for him, and he dealt with it by making jokes, and he's always been the funny guy. So to me, he was probably triggered too, because I was talking about something that he may have not been in the right place to hear, or whatever. I didn't even ask him, are you in the right place to hear this? I just started talking about something. And then I was triggered too, feeling not heard. And that was my thing from childhood.
Yes.
So absolutely that plays in, because I was the little 5-year-old girl going, okay, I guess my words aren't important. And he was over here going, this is too much for me. I need to make a joke.
Yeah, and the other thing that I did notice that you did really good is that you allowed space. You just say, hey, you distance yourself, and then you were able to cool down and think about, what's this, why do I feel the way I did? And, what's the trigger? What's actually the root trigger? They were saying, Dale Carnegie said, ask the 5 whys, right? So you say, hey, this thing happened, but why did it happen? And you have explanation, but why? You ask 5 levels down, and then you may find a really root cause. And the other thing that I noticed from what you said about Jeff as well, he's, man, and men like solve problems. So me being engineer, I work with a lot with men, and their issue, if they see their wives in distress, they want to bring a solution. And when they can't, they feel like almost like useless, or they feel bad. And at that time, then they will make jokes to kind of relieve themselves, because there's no solution to be found. A lot of times women complain to men, they just want to be heard, like what you said, but you don't really want a solution. And even if Jeff offers solution, it's not the solution you want, because we women have, we're not that straightforward. We
Yeah.
have some other solution that will come up with totally from, a man's very analytical mind. However, when man feels that, hey, they can't help their beloved, and then they feel kind of like, oh, I'm not good enough, and I cannot even help my wife to do this or to solve this problem. They're problem solvers. Men are definitely problem solvers. And when they feel they're unable to do that and they have to make a joke or something, so they make themselves feel better. But all the wife, we heard this time and time before, but really have to say, hey, all the wife wants to do is you just sit there, say, nod your head, and, just say, and then sometimes reflect back, say, oh, you felt this way, right? And then the wife will feel hurt, and then she'll walk away and feeling much better without you having to solve the problem. Am I right, Jeff?
Totally. She has a whole thing on this about the cups and everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, one way I describe this to clients is that, so in this situation, I'm coming in and I have this cup full of my emotions and stuff that I'm working through and all of the situation that I'm talking about and everything. My cup is full. Jeff is holding a cup that's empty. What I'm wanting to do is I'm just wanting to pour the contents of my cup into Jeff's cup by telling him all about my feelings and what I'm dealing with and all of this kind of stuff. And then all Jeff has to do is look at it and comment on it and tell me that those things in the cup are valid. They're really there. Like, yes, you make sense. What you're saying makes sense, and I can understand that you might feel this way. Mm-hmm. And I don't need him to fix it. I don't need him to drink the liquid and make his emotions mine. He doesn't need to carry my emotions for me. He doesn't need to solve my emotions. He doesn't need to change my emotions. He can just look at them and he can validate that they're real. Mm-hmm. And then what he gets to do afterwards is he gets to pour the liquid out, and then both of our cups are empty. They're light. Mm-hmm. We can both walk away from the situation feeling like we've emptied the cups.
Yeah. I really like the analogy. I can see the imagery. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But also what happens if he does the opposite?
Yeah, if he does the opposite. So in this situation, if Jeff were to have made a joke or if he were to have tried to solve my problem, or if he would have said, you know what, don't be upset about this. This is why you should be happy about this, or turn it around, or say why the other person who I felt wronged me or whatever was right, or any of those other of these other responses, then it would have been like he was pouring that right in my face. Mm-hmm. And then it would make me less likely to want to share those things with him again, because I wouldn't feel emotionally safe. And then most likely I wouldn't want to have sex with him for a while. I mean, let's just be honest, because I wouldn't be feeling emotionally connected to him. I wouldn't feel like he had my back, and I wouldn't feel like he could trust me. And it's really that, it can be that simple sometimes, that going back to compassion, how healing that compassion is and how connecting that compassion is.
Yes.
And it does take steps of recognizing that other people's emotions are not your own. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to carry their feelings for them. You don't have to solve their feelings for them. You just have to sit in the discomfort with them so they're not alone.
Very good. Yeah. That was, even with grief and everything, it's like that too. And so I really like that, what you said.
Another thing is for women to recognize that compassion is not only emotional, it is physical in a way. And so to just understand how men experience that feeling of emotional connection, emotional safety, trust, respect, feeling like you have their back, feeling that they're receiving and giving compassion through sexual intimacy.
Yes.
And I think that that's a misunderstood thing about men for a lot of women, and women that I've talked to, or my clients and other women talking about this, have expressed surprise that no, it's not just about getting off. Yes, I mean, orgasms are wonderful. We love having them, but it is a physical way that men can connect, knowing that men are socialized to do and not necessarily to to verbalize or to emote. And so how can they express all of these feelings that they've had to walk off and suck up and not have been told they can't feel or show other than something physical?
Exactly. That is exactly what compassion is, right? So what you're talking about is exactly what compassion. So you see, if I were a man, like that's how they function. And, by being physically close, it's sometimes they feel that, hey, that's my way of saying I'm sorry. If you see from that standpoint, then you don't think they're like, all they want is physical closeness. They don't care about how I feel. Then, once you understand that, you have compassion toward what they are trying to do. Maybe they are trying to bring the relationship closer together, but we women misunderstood as, you are skipping a step of being emotionally close to me before physical. You just want, take from me whatever you want to get. But, by us women understand that's not what the man, trying to do. They're trying to, apologize or feel closer again. That really helps.
And they're trying to give.
Right.
That's a way that they can give, that they feel comfortable with in this situation. Going back to the joking Jeff, he really didn't know what to give me there, I know, and so he was trying to give me humor because he knows he can do that verbally very well.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any physical way that he could fix this for me. And we all as humans we have mirror neurons. We're deeply affected by other people's feelings. And if we cannot relieve the pain of others, it can feel deeply painful for us. And so going through that route of compassion by taking the break and thinking about it led me to be able to understand where Jeff was there. And then for me to be able to come back and connect with him and help him understand where I was too. It's not like it's not important for him to understand that. Yeah. But I think that if we're expecting compassion from the other person without giving it, then you're losing out anyway, because getting to a place of compassion, it really is healing for us as individuals.
Yeah. And the other thing that we need to, I guess, differentiate is, being compassionate. Let's say I have this image come to my mind. Let's say one of your friends in the bottom of the well, right? And so being compassionate is to hand a stick over to him or her and, to help him climb out and not get down in the well with him. So a lot of times we feel that we are afraid of compassion or being compassionate to some people because we think that person is going to bring us down. So, if somebody is in a bad place and you try to be compassionate to them, and sometimes we're like, oh, you feel drained or you feel like you are brought down. But being compassionate is actually, like what Terah was saying, just sit there with them, and recognize their feelings. You do not have to take over their feelings. Like you said, don't have to drink the cup down, but, recognize it and validate it. So that's the difference between going down the well versus going on top of the well and try to hand that person a rope so he or she can climb up. I'm sorry.
I love that. Because what you're talking about is empowering them, knowing that you can be there to witness their emotions or their struggle, whatever they're going through, but you are empowering them to do it themselves. You're giving them tools.
Yeah.
But you're not doing it for them. Brené Brown talks about compassion in the sense of boundaries being compassionate. Yes, and that's definitely what you're talking about is your boundary is that you're not going down into the well.
Right.
That's not going to help either of you. Then you're going to be both down in the well, calling for somebody else to help you. But to be able to lend that rope, knowing that you're willing to pull it up, but you're not willing to go down.
Right. And a lot of times it's good not to, when you say guide them out, it's best not to say, tell them, but ask questions. You don't tell them, hey, this is not so bad, or, I know so-and-so who has the same experience, but he or she is much better now. That really doesn't help that person at the time. So, by ask questions, say, hey, what do you think your next step would be? Or how do you feel about this? Get this help? Or, how do you feel about, doing another process? Just by asking questions and allowing that person to find his own path. I think that's very compassionate, instead of injecting your own solution onto their issue. So.
Yeah, I have a visual of that one for you too. I mean, we're talking about the well, but here's another one that I really like. And so it's in reference to how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
So, when the caterpillar is in the pupa? Cocoon? Okay, the pupa is in the cocoon. It's the pupa, right? That's in the cocoon. Well, when it starts forming wings and everything to become a butterfly, the process of getting out of the cocoon is to bat its wings against the cocoon. And what that does is it strengthens the muscles of the wings so that the butterfly can fly. It also dries them off, and it gets them ready to, once they get out of the cocoon, to be able to fly. But if we were to try to help that butterfly by peeling the cocoon so that it could get out more easily, then it would die, because it would never be able to fly. It'd be all wet. It would be, its wings would not be strong enough. So being there to witness a butterfly coming out of a cocoon is a beautiful thing, but it's in the struggle that butterfly gets the strength.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what sometimes what I think the life is about, I think our life, a lot of people talk about lessons. You learn certain lessons, then you go on to the next lesson, you go on to the next lesson. And I think another analogy is that I think it's puzzle. So I think we come to this life as whole. You are whole, you are this beautiful being, and we each have our own circumstances that actually break the puzzle, like scrambles the puzzle. So our job with our journey here is put the puzzle back together. Like remembering who we were when we are, just a baby, or when we're, the spirit that we are. So a lot of times, if anybody did puzzle before, you actually have to study each piece to put it back together. You have to study, where the white is, where the gray is, where the color is. You have to really learn about that piece. So I think, our job a lot of times learn who we are. In order to put us back together, we have to kind of really reflect, say, hey, this makes me happy, or, this doesn't make me happy. My authentic self is this. Doesn't matter what other people tell me who I am. You really have to just be quiet and in a quiet place, or just know yourself. That's the only way you can put the puzzles back together. And, that's hard.
Oh, it is. And, some of those puzzles take a long time to do.
Yeah.
And more than one person to do them.
Definitely.
Well, I'm thinking back what you said about compassion. Part of that is the self-compassion, and going back to childhood wounds, and how very much culturally we are taught that our worth is not in who we are, it's in what we do, it's in our performance. And I think that is one of the key factors that makes us struggle to be compassionate. When you get caught up in looking at what people do and what we do ourselves, and that defines our worth, then you really get caught up in all of these actions leading to someone doesn't deserve compassion, because look at this person, they don't even have a job, or they're homeless, or they've made these decisions in their lives that have led them to this place, et cetera, all the ways that we judge ourselves and others, versus being able to see people just for pure humans who have worth, like you said earlier, sentient beings. Even ants are sentient beings. And just having compassion and honoring that.
Yeah. I don't know if I talked about my last talk or not, but I feel that one thing that speaks to me about compassion is motherly love, right? It's not your mother in this life, or I know some people didn't have the best relationship with their mother, but the mother you imagine, the mother that you imagine you are, or the father you imagine you are, just what do you want from your children? So I ask people, hey, what do you want from your children? They say, well, I want them to be happy. I want them to appreciate what I do because I'm doing my best. I'm bending myself backwards, do everything to please, my children. I just want them to be, appreciative and not complaining. So, if as mothers and fathers, we all understand that. And so I think that outweighs many times as if my son or daughter is going to be a lawyer or, a doctor or climb up the society ladder. For me is the foremost is, my children to be happy. And, and then I don't need them to repay anything that all my care for them other than them being appreciative. So I think, the universe, feel the same way about us in a lot of ways. We don't need to be this perfect, in our own mind, be this perfect being to please, anybody or ourselves. We are already perfect as we are. The other day I was walking, right now is autumn, right? And, I look at the leaves falling on the floor, and I saw a really beautiful orange, pink one, the orange, yellow leaf. So I pick it up and, it struck me as beautiful. And then I say, hey, why is this beautiful? Well, it has a little brown wormhole in it that made it unique. So I thought, hey, the leaf itself probably think I'm so ugly. I have this wormhole inside of me. But as, if I see through the loving eye of the divine or God, I would see, hey, this leaf is really beautiful because it's different. It has this really cool marking, right? And we need to see ourselves as that. Just like a coin, have face side and have tail side. Every one of your perceived, fault or whatever has a positive side. Let's say you think, hey, I'm disorganized. What's the positive side? I'm creative, right? So, look at all your things that you think that's imperfect. Look what the other side is, what the other side having this attribute brings you. So in that way, you just have to say, hey, I'm a good person. I'm good. I'm loved, by the universe. And I love myself. And, I'm doing the best I can. I accept myself. So that's the self-compassion that's so important, because that's the one of the piece to be happy and be free.
There's a book that was written by Scott Adams called God's Debris. And it's an interesting thought experiment kind of a book. Basically, the gist of the book is it's a guy who meets the smartest man in the world. Yeah. And he spends time talking with him about various things. And as he's asking him all these questions. He's kind of like a wise man kind of thought process. And he's kind of going through all this stuff. And ultimately, the book finally gets down to what the point of the whole book basically is, to bring you to the whole thing, they're talking about God, and they're talking about how God was all knowing, and if God's all knowing, then why would this happen? Or God's knowing, why would this happen? And they're kind of going through all this stuff, and he's like, okay, well, but if he is all knowing, why would he have done any of this? Mm-hmm. And they go, because he would have seen the past, the present, the future. There's nothing there that he doesn't already know. And basically the gist of it is he kind of goes, well, he didn't do it. Mm-hmm. Like everything that we think of, God watching us, God doing all this, he goes, that's not what's happening at all. He goes, what's happening is the reason of the Big Bang was God destroying himself, because and as he destroyed himself, all the debris goes out, and we're all just part of God.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so and I remember I was listening to this book as I was walking, and I was like, at the time when he finally got to the meat of the whole thing, I was like, oh, wow, that is an interesting thought process, that he's letting himself come out into all of us.
That's
in
what I
every
believe.
Piece of the world and the universe.
Yeah, that's what I believe. I believe, let's say God is gold. So God has certain properties, right? Love, compassion, all that, the perfect, you're thinking of God. So all of us are elemental gold. We are the atom, gold atom. So what makes an atom and the piece of gold different? For people who took chemistry, there's really not, because chemical property of the single atom of a gold is exactly duplicate of a nugget, a golden nugget, right? So we are embodiment of this divine, perfection. And we just have to know it. We just have to, and I think it probably resonate with a lot of people because their high conscious probably know that. But, we do, we judge ourselves. So a lot of times.
Well, and that disconnects us from the universe, right? When
Yes.
we judge ourselves, it's like an interrupter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the judgment, very interestingly, I was talking to Terah about one of my classmates who's very young and passed away in her sleep about a month ago. So, it really brought me to thinking, I'm not the one who like to attend funerals or remembrances or anything, but, I felt the need to go. So I attended the ceremony and, but it was very interesting. What struck me very interesting is that all her peculiarities when she was alive become things that her uniqueness, everybody remembers her by. And everybody said, she was really cute of doing that, or this was, and, she used to, like a mouse, take all the pepperoni out of the pizza and, and things like that, and I'm sure at the time the parents probably were mad at her for, not being tidy or something. But now when they remember, they go, oh, that was, that was what makes her and makes her endearing. So, I think a lot of times we are so judging about people, doing this and that. But in the end, everything melts. The only love remains. Doesn't matter what you did in your life, what job you had, and, what kind of little quirks you had. And in the end, the distillation of our life is a love.
That's beautiful. I love the way that you said that.
Yeah. And then, we judge ourselves. It's like, I am, I don't want to use the color gray because I have certain intonations nowadays, but I think we are maybe 1,000 different shade of gray, to be honest. It just, we're comparing to our neighbor, we're comparing to our friend. Oh, I'm a little bit lighter than you are, or this person is a little bit darker than I am, so I feel really good because he or she is not as light or white as I am. And then you compare to next person, like, oh, I am a little bit darker than this person, so I feel really bad. Hey, I'm not as good as Mr. Jones, let's say. And you're in this, feeling superior and feeling inferior all the time. But I think to God, he doesn't differentiate. We're just this beautiful rainbow color to him. Everybody's unique. Everybody has this spark of different colors. And he's not comparing us. He doesn't have time to compare who's a shade darker than the other one. We just all accept it, and we're all beautiful in his eyes. I really believe that.
This just reminds me of the Oscar Wilde quote that I always love, which is, be yourself because everyone else is already taken.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that's what our uniqueness is, what makes us special.
Yeah, it's like all the different colors of the ocean, talking about colors, I mean, if all of the ocean was one exact shade of blue, it wouldn't be so beautiful. So it needs to be all these different shades.
Right.
And in order to complete this big puzzle, this big picture, the differences are what make us beautiful instead of being threatening.
Yeah. And if you look at the autumn tree, right? They're so beautiful, go yellow, golden, orange. But have you looked at it closely? How many dead leaves do you see? How many weird twigs do you see that's just not so pleasant to the eye? But as a whole, it's beautiful, right?
We're all Monets.
Yes.
Right? We look good from really far away. But Monets are beautiful paintings.
Yes. So, then I looked up the color gray on Wikipedia. And then, I looked at the color gray on Wikipedia. And it's interesting. It was talking about clouds. And it says when the sunlight shines through the clouds, then it's like white clouds you see. But if the clouds are too many layers, then you see the gray clouds, right? So my thought is that instead of comparing ourselves to the next person who's, less or more grayer, we would just thin ourselves, make ours more transparent, make ourselves more authentic so the light can shine through. Then we are just this brilliant white. Why instead of comparing ourselves or judging against other person, let's work on ourselves, make our own heart pure, make our, just let the light of divine shine through us. So, that's what, for me, that's how I think.
Yeah, and then people can truly see who you are, and it's in these, like you were talking about your friend who passed away, and it was all of these imperfections that maybe she was judgmental about of herself or other people in her life thought were annoying or whatever, but it was all of these imperfections that connected others to her. Mm-hmm. And so that's something I think about when people get, and we all do this, we get caught up in those comparisons and feeling like I need to be perfect for people to love me, and I need to have all of my stuff together, and I need to dress this way and look this way, and I need to look like I have all my shit together, basically, is what it comes down to. And we think we need that to be loved, but it's the exact opposite. It's in what you might see as weakness that other people connect to you, because we all feel that. Perfect is something none of us, the way that perfect is defined by our culture, right, is something that none of us are.
Yeah, it's but commercials.
Yes, but we're perfectly imperfect is what we are, and so nobody can reach that ideal. And if you did, other people wouldn't want to be around you, because there would be nothing to connect to, it's just like, oh, well, this person's perfect. Then, so that's something that I think about a lot and talk to people a lot about, is if you're looking for connections, which we all are, then taking that risk and being vulnerable and showing up all of your dirty bits and your clean bits and all in between, that's what really connects us. And then you can be transparent and let the light shine through.
Right. And it's difficult in this society, right? We look at Facebook, what do we see? perfect life, right?
Yeah.
We look at the TV commercial. What do we see? Perfect life, right? But knowing that's just a facade, right? Knowing that, hey, just be real, and I have faults, you have faults, but in the grand scheme, all of us are perfect. Because when we say, hey, I have this I need to work on, I have that to work on. But if you look above, from like a macro vision, we are perfect. But we have to really accept ourselves to know that. And, like going to memorials, when, just really make me realize that. Because you think, hey, if, everybody take waking up the second day for granted, and there are many people who doesn't wake up. And then, how you have you lived? Have you given what your gift is to this world, right? And have you, at the end, I don't think there is a God that's sitting on the throne that's going to be judging you. I really don't think so. I think the only person is going to, quote unquote, judge or not judge is yourself. You're going to say, hey, have I lived this fully? And in very compassionately judging, have I lived this fully? What kind of lessons have I learned? What have I given? What have I contributed? Did I give love? And, who loved me? And did I share what my gifts are? So, I think to everybody it's different. Of course, everybody come from different religions and things like that. And everybody's thoughts are unique. And, and I respect all that.
So the Stoics used to have a saying, 2,000 years ago. They used to walk around, they'd have it on a coin, or they'd put it on a ring, that they would have at all times. And it was Latin, said memento mori, which just all it means is, when translated, is remember death. And
Yes.
And the point of the whole thing is not, always be thinking about that you're going to die and everything. The point is for you to realize that I'm supposed to be living right now, not watching Netflix all day, not doing this other stuff. What are you actually doing? Because, tomorrow's not promised. It's not
Carpe diem.
Yeah, carpe diem. So that's something that when you start to think of it in those terms, you start to realize, and you'll hear other people, Steve Jobs had a great commencement speech where he talked about that at Stanford. You can watch that on YouTube. It's awesome. Where he basically said, after he was diagnosed with cancer, that he was like, when you remember that you're going to die, it's the greatest thing to help you want to really live. So you'll spend every day. He said, I would wake up every day and look at myself in the mirror and said, if this was my last day on earth, would I still want to be doing what I'm doing?
Yeah. So I think I heard Buddhism have a meditation. It's meditation of death. So they'll just meditate through the whole death and decaying process, which is really weird. But
so when you say that, you mean that they just take themselves through thinking about that whole process? Okay, that's interesting.
That was very interesting.
So their own process, thinking about themselves dying and decaying. Yeah.
So I didn't understand that at first. Then a light bulb came to my head, and I'm going like, okay, that's what they're doing. So what they are doing is, once you go through the process, I think you conquer the fear of death in a way, and then you're free.
That makes sense.
The other thing to work through for relationship too, I think our biggest lesson is to figure out what our worst fear is. A lot of people, let's say their worst fear is getting divorced because, that's not what their parents did, and that's, caused maybe instability or whatever, right? And so it's very interesting. Your partner will know that, That's your worst fear. And that's their tool for controlling sometimes. And I know couples would be in a really bad relationship where, one of them does not want to get divorced. And the biggest fear is looking bad and, have a broken marriage and feel like a failure. And the other person consciously or unconsciously know that's their fear. So sometimes they'll say, hey, or kind of hint if so-and-so doesn't do such and such, that will be the consequence. And that binds a lot of people, down. And very interestingly, when we face that fear and we say, hey, if this happened, I'll still be okay. And that makes a shift in the relationship. Because once you figure out what your worst fear is and be able to realize you're going to be okay, and then take the control out of the other person. And a lot of times they will change to be the better spouse. And then the marriage suddenly become more secure than before. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like ironic because, when somebody keep on holding on something, afraid to lose it, that marriage is actually not secure. When they say, hey, I'm willing to let go. I don't have this fear anymore. And when you change, the other person changes. And sometimes that marriage become even more secure than before and more authentic. And there's no power struggle.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Especially thinking of, if you're afraid something's going to happen, so you're doing all kinds of things so that it doesn't happen, that you're living from a place of fear and you're living from a place of avoiding something bad happening versus seeking positive things to happen. And so if that's where you are, then you're bringing that into the relationship and that's going to affect both people. And so being able to let go of that biggest fear of, and I think you're right, for a lot of people, it's that my partner would leave me from in whatever way, by dying or by divorce or by getting lost in the mall or whatever. But that fear of being left and abandoned, being able to work through that actually makes it not happen. Because if you can think that far out, and the person who has the fear, then like if I'm afraid that Jeff is going to leave me, then I might try to restrict his activities. I might try to say, no, you can't go out at night because I need you to be home, or no, if you're going to go to this place, I need to be with you to make sure that you don't meet a woman, or all of this stuff could create this situation where he doesn't feel like I trust him and he's unhappy in the relationship and he leaves me, you know?
Yeah. So definitely, I think, a lot of times the faulty thing when we get into relationships is like, oh, someday he or she will change. The only person you can change is yourself. You can never change your partner. But by changing yourself, you will change your partner, because it's just the way the law of physics works, right? It's like action and reaction. If you, move certain way and that person who want to be with you or merge into you, if you shift, that the other part will have to shift with you. And a lot of times we have to be the person that we want to attract. So let's say I want to, attract somebody who is giving and loving and, kind and compassionate. Be that person first. You cannot attract that person, saying, hey, I need such person, with you not being that person to start out with. So, if you're in a relationship or if you're looking for some relationship, be the person you want to attract, and that person will come to your life.
This sort of all falls under are you trying to get an outcome? You're trying to basically bend the universe to get an outcome that you want, that you're trying to get, versus I'm doing all the things that I know is right and I feel good about, and the outcome is whatever it is.
Yes.
So a good way to look at that is, let's just say I wrote a book, and I write this book, I put a lot of effort into the thing, I want it to be New York Times bestseller and all this kind of stuff. Well, if your only success is for it to be something that's an outside thing to happen, like being on New York bestseller, or I sold the most books ever, or any of that kind of stuff, that's completely out of your control. But what I do have control under is doing all the research right, doing the best I can, getting the help from other mentors that I could get to make this book as good as it can be, the best editors I can do. These are all things I can do. So by the time the thing's done, I know it was a success.
Yes.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with how many it sold, because I know I did everything as good as it could possibly be.
Right. That's all that matters.
And that's all that matters.
You are empowered.
And that's where people are attracted to that too. So your partner's going to see that you're doing all that stuff. And it's like, instead of you trying to bend the universe so that they'll do this certain thing to get this certain crazy outcome that they're going to feel, that they're being manipulated and stuff. But if you're like, no, and they see that you're doing all really, really good things and you're working towards all this stuff, and they're inspired by what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they want to gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah. Just like he said, it's a journey. It's not destination, right? Destination is become the New York bestseller, but the journey is what the meat is in. Even if your book does not become the bestseller, you're still fulfilled because your journey has been, very worth it. It comes back to, self-acceptance, because and self-love, because whenever you're with a person, often you look at yourself, it's like different mirror. They're holding a mirror, right? So, and those are the mirrors in the amusement park. So if I'm with you, Terah, I look at you and look to seek myself, maybe that's one of those funny mirrors make me look taller, right? And if Jeff, when I talk to you, if you're holding the other mirror and then my image is distorted, maybe I'm shorter or, or thinner. But if I believe that person I see in this mirror is who I really am, then I'm very easily swayed by, people's judgment or, how I feel. It's all depend on how other people react to me. So you have to have your own mirror, the authentic, straight mirror that we usually use. You have to have the image of you, and that's who you are. You cannot, be swayed by other people's opinion of you, because they're seeing you through their own lens. They're seeing you through their own past experience. They're seeing you through their own hurt and their own worry about being hurt. They're seeing you through different filters. But you have to know your authentic self and love that. And then you're happy and free and you don't care what other people say.
Yeah, and I think that going back to, the first pillar of compassion and how all of these pillars of happiness are about freeing yourself and bringing love into your life. I mean, that is where it starts, is having that compassion for yourself and that acceptance for yourself and freeing yourself. I was listening to this book that I'm loving right now. It's called Burnout by Emily Nagoski, and I'll be interviewing her in November.
Wow. And
she talks about the levels of stress that women deal with, particularly that lead to burnout. And one of the things that she talks about that as it's an antidote on the things that she gives for burnout is compassion. And she also talks about how often it is the hardest person to give compassion to is yourself. And so if that is too hard, you can start with giving compassion to others first, and then be able to give compassion to yourself. Because as women, often we're already socialized to put others before ourselves. So it may feel really daunting, those who are listening to this podcast now, it may feel really daunting for you to have that compassion and acceptance for yourself right away, but you can start giving that to others, and that's still a gift to you, and getting to that goal of having that compassion and acceptance for yourself. So being able to practice as you're looking at somebody walking down the road, you might start thinking judgmental or negative thoughts about their appearance, because that's something we're all socialized to do, is look at appearance being a part of worth. And so then you can just start changing your thought patterns and say, wow, this person looks different from me. I love this difference. I love that her hair is really long and mine is short, or I love that whatever, just really start all the things that you might have started to criticize about somebody else's appearance in your head, just an outward thing, is start rewriting all of that.
I think a lot of times you see people, and what you need to see is the beauty in them. I think that's very important. Everybody has beauty in them. You can go down, look at the mall, people watching. Challenge yourself to find one thing that's beautiful in every person. I think, and it's a trained eye. After a little bit, you actually can find something beautiful in everybody.
Absolutely.
And then you can you look at yourself. You're really beautiful. You're, creation of the divine, the God, you are beautiful. So like what you said, if having compassion on yourself is difficult, do it for others first, and then it'll translate to yourself. Same thing as forgiveness. If forgiving somebody is hard, forgiving yourself is hard, start small. Forgiving something very innocent first, just a step-by-step process. One thing that's very interesting that I was reading is that it was saying that if you see somebody, you see, their attributes that you really like, a lot of time it reflects the attributes that's already in you or you aspire to be. We already know that, right? But if you see a person that you don't like, there's a lot of attributes that he or she has that you don't like, and it was told it's actually your shadow side. Those are the things you need to work on, that we are hiding from, that we don't admit that we have that. So we have to see the light in everybody, and that will bring more light out of those people.
See all the little 5-year-olds inside all of us adults walking around, right? Because we are walking around with our children inside of us. Yes,
we all. And you have to, last but not least, you have to really take care of that little me. Yes. Be compassionate to the little me. And sometimes it's good to just imagine, yourself at the most vulnerable age, and just give yourself a hug, and say, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. You're supported. You even, just talk to your little self, and be loving and be kind and be supportive, because a lot of times when you are at the age you feel like there's nobody that can give that to you, but give that to yourself. Especially if even more, we all have wounds big and small from childhood at different ages, no matter how hard our parents have tried. And some of our parents didn't try. They did the best they could, right? So we all come from varying degrees of having wounds as children. And so I think often, especially as adults, we think, I should be over that. It happened so long ago, et cetera, et cetera. And really, neuroscience has showed that the younger you are when traumatic things happen and wounds happen, it creates even stronger neural networks in your brain around those things. And then if repeated things happen that are similar to that trauma or that wound, it makes the neural pathways even stronger. So those things that happen when you were younger that were wounding, they really are real. And you have your 5-year-old self, your 12-year-old self, your 18-year-old self, all of those selves inside you that have been wounded, and they're all looking for compassion. And something that I say to my daughter every night, and I say to myself when I need it, and I'm telling you this now so you can say it to yourself. If you've listened to this podcast a lot, you've heard me say it before, but this is what you can tell yourself at every age, is you are safe, you are loved, and you are worthy. Yes.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here. I feel like this seems a natural time to stop, even though I
Yes.
want to keep
Thank you,
going
Terah.
talking to you. I feel like we could talk for hours every
Yes.
time we see each other. Thank you so much for sharing your
Yes.
wisdom today.
Thank you for having me. It's always been a joy to come to your podcast.
It's a joy for us too. Thank
Thank you.